what I learned is successful people are willing to do what unsuccessful people are not. So I'm successful because I'm willing to do what you ain't willing to do. I'm willing to get up early. I'm willing to stay late. I'm willing to do it over again. And when I don't feel like doing it, I get up and I do it again. And that's the difference between me and you. I'm gonna keep going when I don't feel like going. You wanna go as long as it's comfortable and convenient. But then you wonder why you ain't got what I got. You ain't going where I'm going.
Welcome to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. I am your host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors and our host, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton. How you doing today, sir?
Hey, it's always blessed and highly favored.
Hey, man, that's always excellent here. And we thank you all for tuning in to another righteous and holy episode of Closing the Gap Podcast. We strive to come to you each week with a new episode, and it is always centered around faith and finance, because we are believers in Jesus Christ, and we believe that God is the one that supplies all that we have. And because God supplies it through his son, Jesus Christ, then it is important for us to manage it well. One of the worst things that can ever happen in life is that somebody gives you a gift and you disregard the gift and don't manage the gift well. Well, our gifting that we talk about weekly is the gift of faith that God has given us to be able to believe in him. And faith is defined as the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And in that regard, we go from our faith being that substance, and then also we want to manage our finances. And we know that some of us have what we need now, and we're steadily trying to build up in our finances. And so we want you to have faith that God will supply you and has supplied you with what you need and will supply you with more, but you have to believe that it's possible. And so when we come here, Closing the Gap, we want to help you manage your finances by making sure you have your faith foundationally set in God. And the only way you can do that is to believe that God is, and that God is the one that supplies you with what you have. And even if you don't believe, we want to let you know that what you have, it has come from God, the Father above. The Father of lights is the one that shines on you and supplies you with all that you have. So, Wilbert, being that God supplies us with what we have, we want to go into the show and entitle this show Free Indeed, a declaration of financial independence. We want to celebrate the fact that some of us that are listening, some of the people that are listening, do have a level of financial independence. They have been paying attention to what we have been saying over the years. They have set up their consultation with Hamilton Wealth Advisors, and they are following the plan that you and your team of advisors have given them. They also have a belief in Jesus Christ. They do pray. You know, they do read their Bible. They do realize where their help comes from, and that all of their help comes from the Lord. And so they realize that they are able to have a freedom of mind, a freedom of spirit that allows them to then also have a freedom of financial independence. And so if you don't have that, as we said, this is a declaration of financial independence. We want to pray and declare over your life right now in the name of Jesus that you will have everything that you put your mind to, that God will supply your needs through his riches that come from his glory. We want to declare that you will be the lender and not the borrower. We want to declare that you will be free from your debt. And even if you do have some debt, that it is utilized wisely. We want to declare hope in the midst of a hopeless world and a hopeless generation, because we believe, Wilbur, that that's what's needed now. We need hope. We need somebody to pray over us. We need somebody to declare help for us. As we watch the news and we see all of the negativity that is going on in our local news and in the national news, it can bear down and wear down on us to the point that, you know, we feel enslaved to what's going on around us. But you can have freedom in Christ when you allow your mind to be set on him. So set your mind on things above and not beneath. And I'm a pause right there because I feel my help coming for a moment, and I feel myself about to go into too much of a sermonic mode right now.
Well,
But
I thank God is
I'm
speaking
gonna
to you,
hold the
so
I'm
I'm gonna
gonna
let you
hold the
go.
fire. I'm gonna let the fire be shut up in my bones, and I'm not gonna suppress it. I'm gonna
Okay.
let it flow,
Okay.
but just not all of it right now.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right,
You're gonna
not
make us
all
wait
of it
for it.
right
Gonna make us
now.
wait
Not
for it.
all of
There's
it
much
right
more
now.
to come. And
Yes,
that's
indeed.
it's always great. That's how you know you're surrounded by great company when the Lord is speaking to the people that are in your midst. It's always a positive thing. So it lets me know I'm in the right place. So if you're listening to Closing the Gap, you in the right place as well, because the Lord is definitely speaking, and I know you can feel him, and I hope it gets shut up in your bones as well, and in mine as well. So but it's always, like I say, great to have an opportunity to share more information, obviously, with the people that take time out of their day to, listen to us on the radio or on YouTube and all the various, streaming platforms that we're on. You can check us out, obviously, Closing the Gap, the Truth. But we've all been blessed to be in the situations we're in, regardless of what the situation looks like, because we know that God is all powerful, and He can make any situation a great situation. So just be thankful that you have a situation. If you have a situation, there's an opportunity, to be had, and that's the great thing about the Lord, that He can make your crooked path straight, and He can make what the devil meant to harm you, He can turn around and have it used, for your good. So, that's always a blessing. But we definitely have to do our part with standing the word and striving to be righteous and holy. Striving to be better than we were the day before. We know that we're all unfinished works, and we all fall short of His glory, and which is why we have to stay focused, which is why we have to stay faithful. We have to stay seeking after Him. At all times, and seeking after Him and seeking after the people that He has placed into your life. And obviously we want to be a resource and a vessel for change, and helping to teach our community how to create generational wealth. And we do understand that it all starts with that one person. It always starts at home. Like we said earlier, you got to put your mask on first before you save somebody else. So it's always ironic, and as I see people in our community doing better and better. And I see us, making more money, being more successful. But that doesn't mean that, we're in a better situation always. Because I've seen people that make a lot still end up with a little, because of a lack of planning, because of a lack of preparation. A large portfolio doesn't mean you're going to have a successful outcome, because it can be here today and gone tomorrow. I see many people with, that are highly successful financially, with very high stress levels and a lot of anxiety, because they haven't, planned and prepared for what tomorrow will bring. So we do understand that, retirement is not something that happens by chance. It's something that's actually planned and prepared for. So I tell clients all the time, it's either you plan your retirement or somebody else is going to plan it for you. Now, how that retirement goes is going to be up to you. Because if you plan that retirement, then obviously you're probably going to be traveling. You're going to be enjoying time with family. You're going to be, taking in the sights. You're going to be, doing what you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do it. If somebody else plans your retirement, you might be a greeter at Walmart. You may be, having to take up a second job. You may be trying to go back to the old job. You may be in a situation where you can't go and do what you want to do, when you want to do, and how you want to do it. And none of us want to be in a position where we're 65, 70, 75, 80, where someone is telling us what to do. That's the last place we want to be. We don't want to revert back to childhood almost, where somebody's telling us what to do because we didn't do what we could have done to put ourselves in a better situation. That's where the planning and preparation, which is why last year we stressed, write it down to make it plain, create a plan, review the plan, stick to the plan, maintain the plan, and the plan will see you through. And this year, ours is about alignment and accountability. So we helped you create the plan. And if you haven't created the plan, contact us, Hamilton Wealth Advisor. We can help you create the plan. And then we can help you to stay aligned. And we can become that accountability partner. The same way, New Grace Covenant can be an accountability partner for you from a spiritual standpoint, and making sure that you stay on the right track with the Lord that can ultimately lead you, to the right places and the right people to help you with your finances and with, your taxes and with your legal situations and with everything else that comes about, because, God placed professionals here to provide us professional help.
Right.
So why not use the professionals that he's blessed with and with an acute acumen in different areas, as opposed to trying to go it alone and do it yourself. So we definitely want to kind of take a step back and just let everyone know, make sure, that you seek out the help and you ask God to send you the help. And when you get the help, take the help. Don't get the help and then turn away from the help because it's different than what you are used to or what you're comfortable with. Because change is always uncomfortable. Nothing ever moves the way we want to move and how we want to move all the time. God has to disrupt some things in our life to make us and show us that, what, this is not quite right. We still have some things that we have to do. Work still has to be done. So I have to create change. I have to create some bumpy roads every now and then to let you know, okay, you know what? Let me go back to God on this. Let me stay the course. Let me make sure that I'm doing everything I need to do. Because if your path was always straight, then you wouldn't have a need to go to him. So we understand that, trials and tribulations are a necessary part of life. We all have them. None of us are immune to them, and we're going to continue to have them. But it's how you handle them. It's how you trust God through them. And how he prepares you as you go through those things and how you come out on the other end and you've grown in faith. You've grown in trust. And actually you've grown in, your wherewithal and knowing that, God can and will do any and all things to help you be a better person, to help you put yourself and your family in a better situation. But we have to take the first step.
That's right. Yeah, I like that. Taking that first step, understanding that God can do exceedingly and abundantly above all that you can ask or think. This is what provides us financial independence, is because we first believe that we have independence in faith, because I am dependent on an all-knowing sovereign God that supplies all of my needs through his riches and glory. And when I have that type of mindset, then I'm no longer just focused on what I can acquire, right? But I'm focused on how do I manage those things that I've acquired. And oftentimes, Wilbert, sometimes people like to stack degrees, let's say, right? In education, because some people are addicted to learning. Professional students, right? And there's nothing wrong with learning in any way, shape, or form. It's good to continuously read. It's good to continue your education. But some people just like to acquire degrees, professional learners, and then they never utilize what they have received in education. And it's really useless when we just go about and continuously acquire knowledge, acquire, get, but then we never utilize what we have. So now we become hoarders of information. We become hoarders of degrees. We become hoarders of education. And a lot of us are hoarding finances. We just steadily hustling, striving, trying to get more, and then in all of our getting, we don't have any understanding. Right? And then Scripture warns us of that. In all of our getting, we need to get understanding. We need to get wisdom, and that's where independence truly comes. Freedom truly comes not through all that you've acquired, but freedom comes in understanding how to utilize what you have acquired. The degree that you have, can you put it to use? Not just, and we're not saying put it to use just to make money, but whatever the degree is, how are you utilizing that degree to impact yourself and the greater society? And sometimes that is a means of financial gain. And then other times it's about what you're sharing with somebody else. It's about being able to show your skill set that mentally I've acquired this and now I can actually perform the exercise in. And so when we are speaking about financial independence, you can think about retiring and think about the money that you need, but you have to plan for retirement.
Yes.
That once you reach that stage, you have to have that plan. And essentially, that's what you just said, Will, but it is that when you get to a certain age, well, what is it that you desire? Do you want to have to answer to somebody, or do you want to travel? What is the vision for that place
Yes.
of retirement, and realizing that retirement can be acquired. And sometimes I believe that we think about retirement in an abstract, as though it is too far away
Yeah.
for us to get to, and not understanding that, no, if you plan for it, you can get to it because you've laid out the steps for your retirement, and realizing that my retirement looks different than your retirement.
Yeah.
And often we have too much of a comparison and live in a place where we're striving to be like somebody else and do like somebody else, but we don't have any idea what they have.
Yeah.
We don't have any idea of how their life has been structured. Have they received something from somebody else that has been passed down to them that has allowed them to be where they are and have what they have? What type of work do they do? How much do they earn on their job that provides them the means to live like they live and do what they are able to do? In the book of Luke, chapter 18, there was a man that was praying, a publican, a rich man and a publican. They were praying, and as he went in, he began to brag to God about all that he had and all that he had done, and then began to compare himself to the publican and said, Lord, I'm doing so much for you that I'm not even like him. And pointing the finger at the other person that's praying, and the publican never. The scripture says the publican never looked up to heaven, but just asked the Lord to have mercy on him and kept his head down in humility. And that's what we have to do to really get free, is put our heads down, submit ourselves to God, commit our lives to God, and commit everything that God has given us back to God, in order that we can have the freedom that we truly desire to have.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's always one thing. And we tell people all the time, and they get kind of caught up in accumulating wealth and just growing money. And we're always speaking, we got to design a plan. We got to have a structure. We got to coordinate how this money is going to operate. And when I tell people that, they say, well, what do you mean? I said, well, when we're looking into the future and we want to take what you're doing right now and we want to turn it into something special, there are a number of different factors we have to take into account.
Okay.
We have to create an income plan, an investment plan. We have to create a tax plan. We have to create a healthcare plan, a estate plan. We have to create all these different entities that roll up into being your financial plan. But all that comes out of what you're thinking about is just accumulating money. And yes, you have to do that. And you are the gift that keeps on giving, because you are doing the hard part, because you're accumulating the wealth because of your work and your savings and your habits. But we have to take what you're doing and we got to put it to work. Because if you ask somebody how much money they want to make, it's going to always be more. But how do you know how much you need to have to live the way you want to live if you never put together a plan that can give you a strategic number that you can live on comfortably and have a lifestyle that you want to have for the rest of your life? So you have to take that into consideration and understand that, yes, you're doing the hard part by working hard and making the money. But money without a plan is a recipe for disaster. And we'll see you right back after this break.
Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. And our show today is entitled Free Indeed, the Declaration of Financial Independence. We are entitling this show this because as we celebrate this 4th of July in the United States, it is the time of the 250 years of freedom for these United States. And while there are some varied things that I could go into about this Declaration of Independence for the United States, let us keep in mind the freedom that we always have in Christ. Paul even talks about that in Galatians, about uh, the freedom that we have being free from the yoke of slavery. And so, part of our freedom from 1776, and, we celebrated Juneteenth not too long ago as well, right? There are levels of freedom that, African Americans have come into, and yet still certain yokes of slavery that are still on our necks in a sense, proverbial sense, and things that some of the people that are here are still trying to enslave us into now. So as we think about a Declaration of Independence for the United States, and we are talking about a declaration of financial independence, being free indeed, our basis is about Christ. And so as you struggle through how to celebrate this independence of the United States, be reminded that Christ sets you free in the midst of all times and all situations. That while we have many things that have been set against us in these United States, we can talk about different things that happen, when it comes to homes and redlining and home values and, exclusions in the GI Bill, and even currently the SAVE plan for student loans has been eliminated. The Voting Rights Act, what I'm saying, has been abolished, and even in various southern states, they are pushing for gerrymandered maps. There's always a constant struggle for independence and a struggle for freedom, no matter when it is or where it is. And as we continue to struggle and strain for that, what we are talking about today is, number one, foundationally, your freedom is in Christ. And once you realize that your freedom is in Christ, then you know that Christ is the one that supplies you with the finances that you have. And through the accumulation and planning, proper planning of your finances, then not only will you have freedom of spirit, but now I can have freedom in the flesh through the proper utilization of the finances that I've been blessed with. Wilbur, you talked about it before we went to this, before the break, about the different steps or different levels in the plan of financial independence, of having, what I'm saying, the savings plan, having the retirement plan, having the investment plan, having the tax plan, these different levels that are in there. These are the keys that we're talking about when we speak of a declaration of financial independence, is that there are levels to everything that you must do and that you need to have. But you have to lay out the plan and make sure that all of those different facets that Mr. Hamilton spoke about are aligned with where it is that God desires for you to be, and also where you are headed and where your family is headed as well. Because the thing about having financial independence is that it's for me now, but also I need to make sure that it becomes greater later for the generations that are to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because obviously we know and believe that a righteous man leaves inheritance to his children's children. And, I know I definitely am striving to be righteous and holy.
Yeah.
And I will definitely want to be that righteous man, and I will be that righteous man. So I'm going to go ahead and declare this, speaking into existence, that, I will be, in Jesus' name, a righteous man for, generations to come. And, that is, I was definitely a lot in life for me. That is the goal of how much weather was, to touch people that we'd never come into contact with, in a major way by helping, from a financial planning perspective and put them in a position where they can seek to be successful and, understanding that, time is of the essence. I always say, the time is now. Don't put off tomorrow what you can do today.
Okay.
So we all can, do a little bit better, in the moment, which will help us do a lot better when tomorrow gets here, because of that art of delayed gratification and, understanding that, any time that we put in adds the time on the back end. As we're working now and you start saving now, that's only multiplying the gift that's going to be there later on when you do finally, take a step away and decide to enjoy what we call those golden years. We want those golden years to be golden. We don't want you to, bite into a rotten apple and realize, hey, I got to go back to work. We want to put you in a situation where, you got that golden apple and you can really enjoy life and, and be fruitful, in that second phase of life, as you, phase off into eternity, so to speak. So, understanding how, time is of the essence, because time is the greatest factor in making money. It's not how much money you save always, it's the time in which you have for the money to grow. So timing is so key for multiple reasons, because, the more you invest now, the more it multiplies later, but also understanding how, trying not to time the market, because if I'm consistent in my investing, if I'm consistent in my approach, then I'm able to weather those storms, and I see the storms now as opportunities. So when the market is going down, if I'm being consistent with my plan and my investing, that means I'm just buying more for a lot less, which means that when that tide rises again, that it's going to lift all the boats, and I'm going to be a benefactor of, buying even when times were tough, because I maintain a habit. Because the great thing about the way the market works and when it comes to financial planning is that, thankfully, that when the market hits a rough patch, your pay don't hit a rough patch. Your income from your job usually remains the same. So if you have a set salary, well, that salary remains the same even when the market drops. That just means now that the money that you will put into your 401k is buying you more shares at a lower price of whatever it is you're purchasing, which is a good thing ultimately. So when the market rebounds, it's going to get you a greater yield on the back end. So understanding how key timing is, and, and we don't think about, even with how Social Security operates and how they take your last 35 years of work history when it comes to Social Security, and every year you work, you're knocking off one of those earlier years. So for most people, they started working around, 25 years of age. If you work to 65, well, guess what? That's 40 years of work history. Well, that means that last 5 is knocking out that first 5. And that first 5, usually we're not as making as much money from 25 to 30 as we are from 60 to 65. So those years are helping to raise the value of the benefits that we're going to receive on the back end. Most of us are not maxing out 401ks when we're 25, 26, 27. We're just getting started. But guess what? By the time you're 60 to 65, by then, maybe the house you paid for at 30 is paid off at 60 because you had a 30-year mortgage. So now that money you were paying into the mortgage, now you can max out that 401k on the back end of things and really put away. So now you're saving 25, 30,000. You're like, well, how did I do that? Well, if your house was paid off, that same money you was invested into the mortgage, you now can redirect into your portfolio. So now, investing 25 to 30,000 from 60 to 65 seems a lot more realistic when you don't have a house note, right? But then you think about what that 25 to 30 years going to do. You think about 25,000 a year over the course of 5 years. Well, that means you just put away 125,000, which means that money has grown. It's at least 150 to 175 in value. Now you add that with the other 30 years that you've been investing consistently, strategically over all this time. You look up and like, wow, how did I get here? Well, you just were consistent with your time. Consistently doing the right things over a long period of time are what's going to give you success. It's not always how much you do. It's being consistent and doing something. So that's what's going to yield you the greatest results because you are being diligent in your works. You're not just being here today and gone tomorrow. So understanding how key time is, because whether it's a pension, whether it's Social Security, your 401k, as long as you have those things and you put in that extra time, their values are constantly increasing. It's the reason why from 65 to 70, if you wait to take your Social Security, it's going to increase on an average value of about 8% a year as you defer it. Because guess what? Those latter years are knocking out those early years and increasing the value of the benefits you're going to receive. So understanding how the system works and understanding how to put yourself in a better financial position simply based on timing is always key and relevant. It's understanding how the investment portfolio is going to work. It's understanding the closer I get to that desired retirement date, the more conservative I probably need to be, because I don't have time if the market takes a big dip to come back. See, me at 44, I can weather the storm because I have, life ahead of me to recoup those investment dollars. But if I was 60, I don't need to be taking on the same kind of risk I did at 40, because at 60, I don't have the same time on my side. I'm planning the exit at that particular point in time. So my portfolio needs to reflect that the exit is near. It's like when you're driving and you're on the freeway and you might be going 70 to 75 the whole time on the interstate. But once that GPS says that exit is about a mile away, what you start doing? Slowing down, getting ready to exit. Preparing yourself to take that exit so you don't miss it.
Right.
And if you miss it, ain't no telling how long you gonna have to go before you can turn around and get back to it. The same thing with our investment portfolios. If we miss that exit, how much longer do you have to work in order to allow that money to recover and get back where it was? So that's where the planning comes into play, because the plan tells you when to exit. And if you don't have a plan, the money almost can become irrelevant because you'll lose too much too soon. And depending on when you lose it, there is no getting it back. Losing too much at the wrong point in time, it leaves us in a situation where now we're at the will and the mercy of the market. And no one wants to be in a predicament where they can't control their own destiny. The older you get, the more you want to control. You want to control what you do, when you do it, and how you do it. You don't want to be in a situation where the market is dictating to you when you can go home.
Yeah.
But that comes from the planning and understanding all the things that come with it from an income standpoint, and understanding, that we have to be in the game to win the game. I told this to people 2 years ago when the current administration came in office.
Yeah.
I said, we can do one or two things. Either you can keep complaining about it or you can get in the game. I said, he's going to say, make America great again. Or what part of America has he been trying to make great?
Yeah.
The market.
Yeah.
He's hanging his hats on the market performing well, people making money, the stock market doing well. Well, guess what? I told people then, we got to participate in that. Don't be mad 2 times. Don't be mad that he won, and then you'll be mad that you lost because you ain't make no money. Let's go ahead. Okay, well, we can be not happy with the win, but I can be happy with my financial gain, taking advantage of how the market has been performing along the way. So let me understand this, and let me not cry twice. Let me make sure I take advantage of the situation, because also what has happened during that same time frame, which we knew was going to happen to a certain extent. We knew what? Prices were going to go up. We knew based on the way he operated, there was going to be a cause and effect. So we've seen inflation be much higher than normal. We've seen how this has transpired. We've seen how the prices of everything around us is constantly going up. Now we saw how he got us in a situation with Iran, and how the gas prices have now gone up tremendously. So if I understand that, let me utilize the opportunities that have been provided to me from a financial standpoint and take advantage of what's going on around me. So that's where we have to be diligent. That's where we have to have a plan and be working with a professional to understand how to take advantage of the opportunities, because as bad as things have been in certain ways, and we've lost, rights through the gerrymander, we've seen our history being stripped away, right in front of us. Yeah. Well, do you want to have it stripped away and you still have nothing to show for it? Or do you want to have that stripped away and not have no money? Like they say, I'm going to quote Future on this one. He said, I'll have a lot more fun crying in the back of a Rolls Royce than I would in a Hyundai. Now, ain't nothing against a Hyundai. I've had a Hyundai before.
Right.
But, do you want to cry on this cloth or do you want to cry in that leather? Mm-hmm. It's your choice. So my thing is, let's take advantage of the opportunities that are being provided to us and understand how to properly utilize the market to our benefit. Let me make sure that I can help my family gain and win, because guess what? There are a lot of people winning right now. Mm-hmm. We just want to make sure that we're involved in the process. We understand how to put ourselves in a winning situation.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Winning situation. And the way that you can winning has to be coordinated. It doesn't just happen, right? People don't just go out and play a game and just all of a sudden we just won. Like any real championship that's won, there was a plan that was put in place. They understood themselves first and foremost, yes, and they put in a plan that would be successful for them to be able to win. And then they analyze the opponents.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And based on the opponents and who I am, I put together a plan so that I can be successful. And so that's what we are encouraging everybody to do now, is to get your financial independence. You must examine yourself, examine your finances, and examine your faith, and then devise a plan that will help you get to where you need to be and have the win that you desire. This is how the United States, was able to gain the independence from the British Crown. And we're talking about, this 250-year celebration. Well, what was going on in Britain was they were declaring mm-hmm. that they were abolishing slavery, right? And so the United States did not want them to abolish slavery over here, right? So that's where the disagreement came in. And then the fight for freedom came over here. It wasn't so much of a fight because they really wanted to get rid of slavery or anything, but the fight was, no, we don't want to have the British Crown telling us what to do when we want to do it. And so therefore, as a result of that, there were, things went more private, in that sense. You still had slavery going on, mm-hmm. but it was privatized then once the Declaration of Independence came about and slavery was so-called abolished. Well, slavery was still existing.
Yes.
Because you had privatized slavery then, that it was no longer under the auspices of the government, so to speak, right? And, and I'll just put a plug in that, the historian Gerald Horne has a great book about that, the counter-revolution of 1776, where he speaks about the what was really going on, the backstory that America does not talk about, but what was really their thinking behind the fight for freedom at that time. And so there was a plan in place. And I'll say this, is that whether we agree with the plan or not, there was a plan.
Yes.
And the plan was successful. The freedom that the United States have was not something that was just drifted into. It did not happen by chance, but it was a design, right? They wrote down exactly what they desired to have and went out and acquired that thing. And that's what we're encouraging all of you today, is you need to write down how you want to live your life faithfully, and write down how you want to live your life financially. And then that way, once you write it down, then you will be able to actually acquire those things that you desire. and we'll talk a little bit more about the Declaration of Financial Independence, because you are free indeed, when we come back from this break. Welcome back to Closing Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. And we have entitled this show, Free Indeed, the Declaration of Financial Independence, because we don't want you to be bound by what you don't have, nor do we want you to be bound by what you have. We want you to be able to utilize everything to the glory of God and for your good, because we believe that that's what God desires for you. And so we declare that over your life today, is that everything that you have, you will be able to utilize it to, be able to glorify God through your life. And then the things that you don't have yet, that you are in need of, that God will supply those needs. So we're going to dive back into talking about this Declaration of Financial Independence here. And as we've been saying, this doesn't happen by chance, right? This is coordinated. You can't just stack, get, and then don't have somewhere for these things to go. The way that you truly acquire financial independence is by aligning your plan and your goals together, and then having somebody that keeps you accountable with what it is that you are accumulating. And then also realizing that there are threats to the things that you acquire, right? We always get things, but there are things out here that, even in our own lives, that can, dwindle what we have accumulated, and, divert us, or try to divert us from our plan. There's always attacks. There's always a defense that you have to go against in life, right? That everything doesn't just, even though we make the plan, everything just doesn't happen like we always planned it. Things can come up sometimes, sometimes as a result of our lives and what we've done, and then sometimes things that are outside of our control. But yet, based on what happens outside of our control, we can still take control of the situation if we pay attention to what's coming up against us, right? Because in sports, and crosswinds happen, so to speak, in golf, right? I'm trying to get back on my golf game a little bit, and play, try to play golf. And whenever I would play golf, we would pick up some grass and throw to see which way the wind is blowing, because based on the flight of your ball, you got a yardage that you're trying to get to, and so based on the flight of your ball, how high or how low you hit it, the wind can, dictate whether your ball goes far, or whether your ball falls short, whether your ball goes left, whether your ball goes right. And that's the same thing that happens in our financial world as well. We have crosswinds, and these crosswinds end up making things uncertain in places. And so I know, with you and your team at Hamilton Wealth Advisors, you have certain things that you help your clients with in building a plan, a financial plan for financial independence, that be able to manage the crosswinds, and so that we can strive to beat the crosswinds. So if you could talk about those things, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things we always say, life is going to life. And, I was saying, I'm going to plan for the worst and then hope for the best. And that's the approach that we take when it comes to financial planning. We always want to plan for the worst and hope for the best, because, like I said, we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. We do know if tomorrow's going to be a great day and the market is doing wonderful, then we're going to have a great day. But we still want to have a good day if the market is not so good. We want to understand, how to weather the storm, which is why you have to have a plan, because, we have to know what is our desired destination. We have to know where we're going. What are we trying to achieve? And once you define, where you're going, now we understand that there's always multiple routes to get there. And anytime you put a destination in that GPS, it always gives you multiple routes. Which one is the shortest distance? which one's going to take the least amount of time, which one is going, going to keep you off the highway, or which one is going to take you on the highway. We have different information that we can plug into the system to define the route that we want to take. And then we get to choose which one is going to be our route. Yeah. And thankfully, even if you make a wrong turn, the GPS can reroute you back to your desired destination. And we have to understand that. But the biggest thing is that you still had a destination in mind. We knew where we were going. So understanding that, there's some crosswinds, so to speak, that will come up in your retirement planning process that you are unforeseen. Not that we don't know they're not there. Right. We just don't know when they're going to show up. Taxes are a crosswind. They're always going to be there. But to what level will they be there? Right now we see our U.S. debt growing. Well, we can probably anticipate more of our retirements probably being taxed a little bit greater. Why is that? Well, we have more debt. How does the government pay down their debt? With tax dollars. So we can safely take into account that we're probably going to have some taxes that we have to pay out of this money. Taxes are probably going to increase in the future. Then we have market volatility. None of us are immune to market volatility, but we can minimize the effect of market volatility. That's why we build the income plan into the retirement plan. The income plan is put in place to give you a predictable, guaranteed stream of income for the rest of life. And key word, I say guaranteed. Guaranteed. Now, if the stock market cannot guarantee a return, which it can't, the stock market provides no guarantees. You have to understand, what products do I have or that are available to me that can provide a guaranteed return? Am I lucky enough to have a pension that will provide me a guaranteed benefit in retirement? Okay, what is my Social Security that I'm going to receive? Now, Social Security is not necessarily guaranteed because obviously it can fluctuate. The Social Security Administration is in a position where if they don't make certain changes, certain adjustments, that there could be a shortfall in Social Security within the next 6 years. But they've made changes before. They'll probably make changes again, especially with the life cycle of people having increased and people living longer now. So they're probably going to make some adjustments around the age at which you can start and move that back from 62 maybe to 65. They make some adjustments to it. And once you make some adjustments, that all of a sudden alleviates some of the pressure that is on the Social Security system right now. So we can expect some adjustments possibly to be made. But then we have opportunities out there and annuities and various products that can provide guaranteed income. So now when I'm doing my income planning and I look at my overall portfolio and I look at what I have in Social Security, I look at what I have in my pension if I'm lucky enough to have one, or if I don't have one, I can take a portion of my assets and move into an opportunity that provides me guaranteed income. They did a study. The retirement planning system did a study in the United States. Okay. People who have guaranteed income live 25% longer than people who don't. And they said, well, man, how did that happen? And when they went back and they reviewed the study, the level of stress for the people who had guaranteed income was much lower than the people who didn't. So they were able to live longer, more comfortable, because they weren't as stressed about their financial wherewithal. They knew where their next meal was coming from because they had guaranteed income streams. So if I can maybe add 20-25% to my life, right, I think I'll take that bet. I'm going to move some of my assets into some guaranteed situations. So now I have some for show money to go along with some of the I don't know money. Right now, most people have all their eggs in one basket, and it's a bunch of I don't know money. and it's going to be whatever the market says it's going to be money. Well, once we get into retirement, we don't want to be in a situation where our lifestyle is being dictated to us by what the market is or is not doing. So when you have that income plan and now you've built a stream or built a bucket to provide you guaranteed revenues, regardless of what happens in the market, now you have more peace. Now you have more patience. Now you have more security around your financial planning process. And now you can invest the remaining values that you have, and you're not as worried about the stock market volatility because the money you have left, you can be a little bit more optimistic if you so choose to. But if it takes a dip, now you can weather the storm and you can ride the wave and wait for it to come back because you've already secured yourself on the other side with guaranteed income. So this is why these different phases of planning are so important, because we just talked about the income plan, and we talked about how the tax plan is going to affect the income plan, and how the investment plan and how the market, as it ebbs and flows, is going to affect all of it. And the one piece we didn't talk about that people don't think about that actually can affect us in greater detail is the healthcare plan. People on average are going to spend $176,000 per person on medical related and healthcare bills in retirement. And because we don't think about what we're paying Medicare Part A and B, we're not thinking about that Medicare Part D prescription drug coverage. That's supplemental policy that we need to have, because Medicare only covers Part A. I mean, on A and B, up to about 80%. There's a 20% shortfall, the gap that you have to cover. And where does that come from? Well, you got to pick up a Medicare supplement, or a lot of people have a secondary major medical coverage that covers up that 20% gap if they need to have some type of procedure, injury, ailment, whatever it may become. You know, people don't think about when you get older, the more you start to see specialists as you get older. When you're young, you don't see as many specialists. You just got your one general doctor. Yeah. As you get older, you hear old people say, well, I got to go see my podiatrist. I got to go see my cardiologist. I got to go see my doctor. I got to go. They have so many more specialists because, the body has taken on a lot more attrition over time. So now they have to see more specialists because they're dealing with certain things that age and time have just, beat them down a little bit.
Yeah.
So you have to go to people who specialize in the work. You can't just go to the same doctor for everything. They have to refer you out a little bit more because you have different aches and pains. Well, all those things cost. All those things, every time you walk into a doctor's office, you're generating a copay. There is some type of insurance that's being paid. So that cost can be very, very high. Some higher than others. And that's not even taking into account what could be if you need long-term care. The average long-term care facility is $6,200 per month in the United States. Now, how many people have prepared to pay $6,200 per month in healthcare related costs, plus the home healthcare facility or the assisted living facility or the nursing home? See, we've thought about maybe one of the two. But when you think about all of it together, these are things that we have to take into consideration, which is why the planning cannot go undone. It has to be. If you want to have a successful future, if you want to leave a legacy to the next generation, if you want to put your family in a position where, you can be that one and say, I was that righteous man that left an inheritance to my children's children. If you fail to do the healthcare planning, the income planning, the tax planning, the investment planning, the long-term care planning, now you're leaving everything up to fate. So as to how impactful your legacy will be to the next generation. Well, with the right type of planning, you can ensure the success of your financial plan and that estate plan and what you're going to pass on to the next generation by making sure you have long-term care insurance, or having, supplemental, medical coverage, by having, an income plan, by having all these things in place. we give ourselves a greater chance at success by making sure that we've done all that we can and all that we need to put ourselves in a situation where the next generation can win and have a head start on life. Because at the end of the day, what is all this for? We're doing what we can do to put our family and our kids in the best situation possible. We want them to be greater later. And if we do these things, it puts us in a position where our kids can have what we hoped and wished for. And I think that's the goal for every parent. Every parent wants their kids to live a life that was better than theirs. Now, you can control how good that life is. Now, does that mean your kids gonna be perfect? No, because we weren't perfect. But if I can help to alleviate some of the bumps in the road, if I can put them in a position where they can chase their dreams, then I've done my job. See, this is the power and the benefit of financial planning and, being a righteous man, because it ain't always about money. Very seldom is it really about money. It's really about the impact. And I'm grateful and thankful because we're live right now because I'm the benefactor of a mother and a father put me in a better situation because I had options and choices, because they did the necessary planning for them. It put me in a position to have choices, to have options, to decide which job I was going to take. Are you going to be a teacher and a coach? Or are you going to journey down this path of being a financial professional? Had my parents not done the planning and not had the stability to be able to give me a chance to chase what was a dream that happened to turn into a reality, I wouldn't be sitting here today. Closing the Gap may not be here. But because my parents made sure they had the pensions, they had the long-term care insurance, they did all the necessary things to give me an opportunity and a choice. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're working hard to give our kids choices that we didn't have. And when you leave an inheritance to your children's children, you're giving them an opportunity to dream. You're giving them an opportunity to be the best version of themselves, because now, instead of doing what is necessary, they can do what they dream of. And how many times have people had to go out and do what was necessary and turn their backs on their dreams for the next generation? So I'm thankful and grateful that my parents did some planning. They did some preparation. They put in the work because it allowed me the opportunity to dream. And that dream is now turned into a reality.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. The reality. And we thank God for the reality. I'm grateful for the reality because that plan allowed me to be here with you, allowed us to be here together. And so it's not by chance, it's by God's design, God's sovereignty, that all of these things have come into being. And we oftentimes fail to declare our independence and believe that these things are possible because the world tells us what's impossible.
Yes.
But with God, all things are possible. And so we want you to know that as we strive to give you tools to declare your faith and financial independence, that understand that all things are possible through God, and to make sure that all the pieces of your independence are aligned today. And so we want to just give you a couple of things as we close. Understand that you need a written income strategy, and there are different levels to that. Know what you own and why you own it, and understand how it can pay you and how it currently pays you. Also, we want you to make decisions driven by a plan and not by panic. That you have faith over fear. Then also understand that everything that you have has a purpose And you have a purpose in life as well, that God did not make you by chance. God made you for his glory, and God has a plan for your life. And since God has a plan for your life, and you can find that plan through reading the Bible, then also you can lay out a declaration of independence plan for your faith and your finances by coming to New Grace Covenant Church, and also reaching out to Hamilton Wealth Advisors for your faith at New Grace and your financial plan with Hamilton Wealth Advisors. And we'll see you all on the next episode.